Hello, welcome back to Malicious Compliance Stories. We have another 3 stories for you today. We already switched seats. You can't reserve seats on public transport. But you said you didn't want my help, Karen. But before we begin, don't forget to subscribe to our channel if you're new here and turn on notifications so you don't miss a new video every single day. Alright, let's get started. Our first story. We already switched seats. English is not my first language, so there may be some grammatical and spelling errors. So, last summer I went on vacation in Greece for a whole month. It was so great to see all my friends again after a year. I am half Greek, half Dutch and have been living in the Netherlands for 5 years. Flying back home takes a whole day because of connecting flights and such. We booked a whole row of seats and an all seat for me. Cue the Greeks, who requested that I move one row back into the opposite side so that the wife could sit next to the husband. As they were flying to a foreign country, I was nice and gave up my seat and went to the L seat where the wife was sitting. After a while, the couple said, "Oh, you have the middle seat." I was confused because the wife was sitting in the aisle. And I said that was not the agreement and I wanted my seat back. The couple said, "Oh, well now we have switched, nothing you can do," while they grinned and laughed, thinking that they had me. I was pissed because they were a-holes, but I noticed that the attendants were shutting the plane doors, so I just smiled and told my family to calm down and that it would all be alright. So, after we took off, it's a 3-hour flight, so it's not that short, I was still in an empty row. I had all the space to myself and was comfortably lying over 3 seats that I had to myself. The couple noticed and made a sour face. They asked if I could move to my original seat. That's when I said, "Oh well, now we have switched, nothing you can do." It was amazing to see my whole family and the surrounding seats trying to cover their laughter. Even the flight attendants were grinning. It's not a very exciting story, but I found it Reddit worthy. I'm not really sure if it fits in this subreddit, but I could not find a karma sub that I could post this in. Our next story. You can't reserve seats on public transport. We, my aunt and uncle, cousin, and dad, were on a long sightseeing ferry ride. It was a 2-hour ride with one stop in the middle. We were the first to get on the ferry, so all of us blocked the window seats in a straight line. It's public transport and there's no concept of reservation, it's first come, first served. We were sitting in the air-conditioned cabin and had the option of going out on the main deck. Just as we stopped in the middle, my dad went out on the main deck to take some pictures and enjoy the fresh air. Another man gets on the ferry at this stop and takes my dad's window seat, though there were a few other window seats left. My aunt and I told him a number of times quite politely that someone was sitting there, but he only said, "I speak French," and proceeded to not hear us. My dad came back and told him he was sitting there, and this man called the security and complained about my dad. The security told my dad, "Sir, this is public transport, seats cannot be reserved." My dad said, "All right," and sat down next to him. So, the scene right now is window man my dad empty seat aisle. About 10 minutes later, the man was about to step out onto the deck. He left his bag on the seat and got up to leave. My dad asked him to kindly remove his bag. He refused. So, my dad refused to get up and move to let him out. My dad said, "You can't reserve seats. You showed me the rule. Kindly follow it yourself." He became very flustered and started clapping his hands and calling for security. For the time being, security was also on the deck, but a barista was there. This man called the barista to help, who didn't understand French either, so he told them in Arabic that my dad was refusing to move to let him out of the seat. The barista was flabbergasted and asked my dad why. I know Arabic, so I intervened and clarified the situation. That is, the man was keeping his bag and reserving his seat, which he told my dad was not allowed. By this time, the man has sort of climbed over my dad to go and call the security, and my dad hasn't budged. Keep in mind that my dad isn't a small man and is quite big with broad shoulders, and the sight of a tiny French man climbing around him was really funny. The security came in and the guy was still feeding them part of the whole story in Arabic. When they came to ask my dad, he said, "You told me moments ago that reserving seats isn't allowed." He was keeping his bag and going out to the deck, thus reserving his seat because no one would sit down in a seat with a bag in it. The security told him he wasn't allowed to do that and removed his bag. My dad got up and told him that he could sit beside the window. My dad just wanted to prove a point, so he came and sat beside me. The man was fuming and muttering, "Camera, police," and a number of colorful French abuses, which I know because I have a French friend. He's glaring at us as I'm writing this, and guess what? He isn't sitting on the window seat anymore. For everyone saying we should not have blocked a bunch of window seats, firstly, the ferry was mostly empty, and a lot of window seats were empty because we went during non-peak hours. Secondly, it was a vacation. All of us paid for the seats and wanted to have the best experience. It wasn't traveling from point A to point B, it was a sightseeing tour, and we wanted the best views individually, not to sit as a group and have one person enjoy it. And no one was screaming to talk to other people. We might take the best seats, but we are still courteous. My dad didn't call security the first time or the second. In both instances, the man called security. The first time, my dad requested him once, and he said he doesn't speak English and got the security involved. And our last story. But you said you didn't want my help, Karen. I'm a bridal consultant at a very popular bridal salon in my town. I have many years of experience and love what I do. Most of the bridal gowns in my shop are special order, meaning they must be ordered before they are made by the designer, and lead times can be anywhere from 4 weeks to 8.5 months. Not everyone knows this when they come shopping for a gown. That's the whole point of my being there. I make sure we can get the dress in time, any desired customizations or alterations are possible, and that the price is within the bride's budget. Well, when this particular bride and her mother stepped into the store, they immediately went to the racks and started ripping through the neatly hung gowns. I introduced myself, explaining that I would be their consultant for the appointment. This bride had a fairly short engagement, about 4.5 months, and I knew that only some of the gowns would be available in time. I tried to explain to her and her mother the process. She sharply cut me off and told me to just let us shop and leave us alone. I was stunned to be spoken to so rudely. So, I did as I was told. I left them alone. Even when I saw them looking at dresses twice her budget, that wouldn't arrive until months after her wedding. I never took any of the gowns back to a dressing room or asked her if she'd like to actually try them on. Even after they stood by for a while, clearly waiting for me to take her back to the dressing rooms, I just continued on with my other work as if they didn't exist. Eventually, they realized that I had no intention of acknowledging or helping them in any way, and they left without getting to try on any gowns. The owner asked me about it after they left, and I told her the whole story. She laughed and said, "Good for you." Well, that's all for this video. Thank you for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.